Hi, welcome back. I have another video. This time I'm taking a look at the new Imperial Infantryman's Handbook. This is a reprint and repackaging of an older set of books, the Imperial Munitorum Manual, as well as the Imperial Infantryman's Uplifting Primer. Both of these are written as in-universe lore books where they take themselves seriously and they are not, just like your standard lore you would get in a codex or rule book, but more written as if they're like those little reports and stuff that you might see like on a single page or in the corner of a page on some of our codexes that we have in our books. And what they are the books that would be given to guardsmen when they become members of the Imperial Guard. So the Imperial Munitorum Manual is the book that explains what the Departamento Munitorum is and what they do, how they function, and any pertinent information, very broad stroke information that guardsmen would need to know about the weapons and equipment and, basic stuff that they all need to know. Whereas the Imperial Infantryman's Uplifting Primer has a lot of crossover information, but it's much more specific and much more in detail, where the Munitorum Manual may talk about the overall kit available to the Imperial Guard, whether it's these are like your boots, and, this is information about the boots, and this is a medical kit, and here's information about the medical kit and how it works, and so on. The Uplifting Primer will detail every single piece of equipment that's going to be issued to the guardsmen, and maybe have some how to maintain, like in the case of a lasgun or something. Excuse me, I need a drink. Basically, some information to help the guardsmen acclimatize themselves to being a guardsman and keeping their kit functional. Also, where the Imperial Munitorum Manual is going to talk about, again, broad stroke ideas of what it means to be in the Guard and what it means to interact with the Munitorum. The Uplifting Primer is, again, very specific. It's the codes and regulations. It's the punishments. So, falling asleep on guard duty, where, you're woken up and you're flogged and shot as a result, and so on. And they go through, there's a lot. There's 3 or 4 pages, I think, of different punishments for the, different crimes. And obviously, I think it says something to the effect of, and that's basically not all. This is just, the most obvious ones. It also is going to include, in the back of this book, actually, it's part of the Imperial Infantryman's Uplifting Primer. In the back, there are all the benedictions and some stories of the great heroes like Saint Lord Solar Macarius, and then prayers that the guardsmen need. And that is on here, this purple section. It's quite a bit, as you can see. Some examples are like the prayer of loading and the prayer of unloading, the the holy litany of machine turning on, essentially. What you have to do and say when you're turning on a vehicle, by pressing the power button, all the stuff you have to say first, and all the ways you have to hold the incense, because it's a machine spirit, it's alive, and you gotta make it feel good before you press that button. Otherwise, it won't work for you. And even some crazy ones like the litany of vacuum or something like that. But essentially it's the prayer they tell recruits if you're in space, on a ship, which then gets hit with something and there's a hull breach and you're sucked out into space. You need to recite this while you swim back to your ship so you can be safe. Of course, obviously, you're holding your nose because you don't want to drown in space or whatever they suggest is going to happen. I actually don't think that information is 100% in here. There is 2 versions of the Imperial Infantryman's Uplifting Primer. Somewhere in my collection, I have the Damocles Gulf Edition, which was released as sort of a tie-in and update to the original, which this is, when Tau came out, I believe. Basically explaining to the guardsmen going to the Damocles Gulf Crusade who these little fish guys are that they're going to be fighting. And again, while this one is very just overall practical, this one's also full of propaganda. And the propaganda is things like what happens when you meet different xenos. So, for example, they'll talk about how, Eldar are very weak and, all their stuff is old and rickety because they're an old race, and thus the younger, more powerful Imperium is going to overpower their weak old weapons because they're just outdated technology, stuff like that. Orcs, they will talk about how brutish they are to an extent, but then they also basically talk about, really playing up their weaknesses. And let me just grab this here for a second. Sorry, I just had to cut there for a second. I'm going to avoid showing the interiors of the book just because this is new, and I don't think it would be an issue so much if I kind of flip through the book a little bit, but I also don't want to get a copyright strike or whatever it is against me from GW, which in this case would be fair because, again, this is a brand new book and I don't want to flip through the book and let people kind of pause and have access to large parts of it depending on how I flipped. So I'm not going to go really too in-depth here, but I'm just going to mention some things that I thought were really neat again, as I said. And going back to the orcs, yeah, they basically say the orcs are just this weird example of an alien species that is essentially just animals. They're not smart. They can't really do anything too intelligent. They just don't have it in them. They're essentially just like dumb beasts that just through some twist of fate wound up being just sentient enough to like be sort of a nuisance. Now they do say they're a threat. Obviously they're very big and scary, but that they're so stupid that you can just basically predict everything they're going to do because they don't think past, animalistic levels. Going back to the Eldar, one of the funny ones that they do mention for them is they mention, these are the aspect warriors and they're the elite, and in brackets, if any alien of this pitiful race could be called elite. But when they talk about the defenders, they essentially say that they're just a bunch of Eldar peasants that are rounded up and forced into battle. And the defenders are the citizen military; they're the militia. So to an extent, that's true. But they say that during the confusion of battle, the explosions, the gunshots, they tend to just stare and like look dumbfounded by everything, and that you should just treat them like the errant children they are. So again, it's propaganda. They tell the people that are in the guard, these are the aliens you're going to face. Tyranids are not that big of a deal because our tanks and artillery will just pound the crap out of them before they're really a threat. But that they do go into some detail. There's hand-drawn images of what different weapons look like for these alien races, or what some certain members of their race look like, and some breakdowns of their military structures or whatever they have. Now, the Damocles Golf Edition does include, as I said, Tau. It's not in here. This one is not the Damocles Golf Edition. So you don't get to have that, but essentially the Tau one is very similar to the orcs and the Eldar, where it's like, don't be worried about them. They're just basically a bunch of space cow people. And that if you make a bunch of loud noises, they'll probably just drop over dead. Like, if you went and did that in a field, they would just tip over. So it's pretty cool the way they handle that. Also in both books, you will find sections to fill out where you can put your name and you can, make up a planet you're inducted from, or, say I'm from Cadia, whatever. And you can list all of your information, and that makes it personalized. Now in this one here, because it's a double feature, I actually like this because originally if you had the Munitorum manual and the uplifting primer, you had two separate books, and both of them carry the death penalty if you don't have them on you. I will show that. It's just here. This is just showing that basically if you don't have it, based on these regulations and this ordinance, you can be shot by the commissar. And that's what I mean by it's done in lore, or in universe lore style. That this is not just, you know, a lore book. It's done as if somebody there wrote it for us. So it's a lot more, you know, in the sense realistic. You know, as much as that term matters in Warhammer. The book itself, nice red faux leather, really cool embossed image. I do love when they have an embossed image, and this is really crisp. It's got lots of details. This cyber lion with the crossed las guns and the chain swords to the back. Very nice. He explains what's in it. So again, the Munitorum manual, the uplifting primer, and the benedictions of the Emperor, inspiration source, and uplifting creeds for all infantrymen. That's that purple section. That one again was in the uplifting primer originally, but I feel like they've kind of made it into this separate section where they've put it together. They don't have to say it's part of either, but I could be wrong on that. The back, again, just nice. More of the, I guess I could have shown you just this. This is the same thing. It's just really cool. It just shows you that you have to take care of this or you're going to get shot. Because this is a very serious piece of equipment that is given to you. And it's how you're going to know to carry yourself as a guardsman defending the Emperor's planets and territories, his worlds. So I do very much like everything about this. It does have a nice little bookmark ribbon. I wish they put more of these in, but at the same time I do understand that it would get really messy if there was multiple. So one's good. I like when there's 2 or 3, but that's like the only complaint, so it's not really a complaint. Overall, this is really great. I would definitely recommend this if you're a guard player or if you're just really into learning more about how the Imperium works, because this covers a lot of that, and I think it makes it very clear what type of government and what the entities of the Munitorum and the Imperial Guard are kind of like to be a part of. And also, again, those pages here, the purple, the benedictions and the prayers and all that, they're really nice to have. I think when you hear Black Library sometimes will mention guardsmen saying prayers, but I have read many Imperial Guard books and I can't think of a single one where they actually, you know, say the prayer in writing so you can read it, at least not in full. But having all those prayers there, I do remember just being, when I first got the book, I'd go to tournaments with my guard, and if I really wanted to make a shot, I'd break this out. I'd have some fun with it. And, you know, that's pretty geeky and stuff, but that's part of our hobby, in my opinion. You know, as long as it's not too much and it's not slowing the game down. Everybody laughed, had a good time. And again, it's just fun. I think most people, even people who didn't play Guard, found the book fun, the one I had. And I think the same thing would be the same here. You're going to find people who are not Guard players that may not want to pay, I think it's 35 Canadian for this thing. It's a bit expensive, but it is 2 books, so, you know, in a sense. So it's not too bad, considering their prices on a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of people would just interest in the lore side. Whether they play Guard or not, it's not going to matter, because this is just interesting. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks very much for your time. If you have any thoughts, questions, whatever, as usual, leave them in the comments. And everybody have a great day.